Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're finally going to start talking about The Wheel of Time. We're going to start off with the first book in the Wheel of Time series, The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. So, as usual, we're going to talk non-spoilery thoughts and opinions up front, and then move over to the spoiler section where I can talk in more detail. So, remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and let's begin. So, The Eye of the World is the first book in the Wheel of Time series, and it was a bit of a struggle for me to read this for some reason. I tried to read it in January and couldn't quite get through it, so I came back to it in February and was listening to the audiobook, and it took me about almost two-thirds into the book before I really got into it and got hooked and just like followed along. But I did, and now I'm completely hooked, and I'm like literally along for the ride now. I'm like kind of amped to see what's going to happen. The Eye of the World is a very straightforward fantasy story. It feels like the one of the stories that originates a lot of these fantasy tropes, like the young guy in town and stuff, kind of stuff. But like this is a little different, where our main character Randall Thor kind of is content at home. Like he's happy being a sheep herder and stuff, and he's not overly what's over the next hill or anything like that. But classic fantasy stuff happens and his village gets attacked and it causes him to basically have to leave home and go on this huge adventure, and he ends up getting a party with them, all kinds of characters with different skills and stuff like that, and they go on this huge quest and they go to do this thing and it's very much a classic fantasy story. To me, it's I noticed about halfway through and I kind of like laughed to myself. I was like, huh, this is the first book in the long series, and it feels like this first book is all of Lord of the Rings. I was just like, I was both impressed and daunted and kind of annoyed. I'm like, there is no mercy for the learning curve here. There is no mercy on like just any mercy at all. Quite frankly, there's no learning. There's like this stuff. Okay. Before I just ramble, let me get into more specifics, I guess. So, as I said, this is a very classic fantasy story, and I already gave kind of a synopsis of it, so I'm not going to go into any more real detail because that would be kind of spoilery. But I will say that after, like, it took me a bit to get used to it because this is kind of like older fantasy. So, the writing style kind of was hard for me to latch onto because a lot of it feels, to me, kind of metaphorical. A lot of the way of wording and stuff, kind of even around the dialogue, not necessarily the way the characters speak to each other, just the way it's written. It's almost like a thing where I have to translate it to contemporary English in my head before I comprehend it. So it makes it harder to just sink right into it. I guess I've been just overly spoiled with like more contemporary writers like Brandon and like friggin' Drew Hayes, like people like that and stuff who just have basically a no style type of writing style. So it just kind of it was hard for me to sink into it, but eventually I did. So something else that made it a little difficult for me to get through initially is the pacing. The story is so slow. It's 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 slow on purpose, but it literally feels like all the memes about Lord of the Rings. It's just like, and we're walking, and we're walking, and we're walking, and like, it kind of felt like that, and it was kind of driving me nuts for a minute. And it took me a long time, what felt like a long time for me, to really get the point. Like, exposition dumps can be crappy, but they can also be very helpful. This book, in my opinion, needed a lot more just pure exposition dumps. I would have been perfectly okay with the characters just sit down and you explain to me what these things are, what they relate to, how this is a thing. Like, because a lot of the words were just thrown out. And yes, it's nice to pick it up in context and stuff like that. But it was also like, you're just saying all this stuff to me and I'm like, wait, what does that mean? What does any of this mean? Like it kind of, so that just kept almost frustrating me and just driving me crazy because I couldn't comprehend anything for so long. And by the time when I did like comprehend it, like there was basically a part about two-thirds in where it's the whole hook of it basically is explicitly said, and that's when I locked in because everything after that kind of retroactively made sense to me. So that's why I'm kind of hyped for the next one and to keep going, because I got it and now I'm into it, now I understand it. But like getting to that point was such a struggle and it's so weird. It's such a weird experience. So the description I gave is fairly vague, just like, classic fantasy tropes and setup, but there's like so much more under all of that. There's the entire concept, the wheel of time and all of that stuff. It just kind of gets woven in. So even though it's like probably originating some of these tropes and it just kind of feels very classic, typical fantasy stuff, there's just all this under stuff is just so interesting. It kind of kept pulling me a little bit. Like there's some stuff that I just wanted to know, and then so it just kind of it got awesome when I started to actually get answers. And there was a point where like the ruby hilted dagger kept coming up, and because of the TV show promos, I was suspect about it. Like I was like that dagger was sus. So I just kind of wanted to keep knowing, keep going to know what was going on with that. And that was before I got properly hooked. But I was just going because of that, like for a while. I'm gonna go ahead and end the non-spoiler section here so we can jump over into spoilers and talk in more detail so I can ramble a little bit more. So, spoiler warning for The Eye of the World. So I already talked about two of the cons that I had with the story in the non-spoilery section, talking about the writing style and the pacing. But another issue that I had with it was the overabundance of characters. A lot of the characters, after a while, felt completely wasted, and they fell to the side, and like they just like I honestly don't even know their names. Like there's just a few of the names that I know, and because they're my favorite characters, so they're the ones that I really latched onto. And at any point, I was like, okay, where are these characters? Where is this person? And that was kind of orienting me to what was going on, because when they split up, I was I didn't yeah it messed me up. It threw me all the way off. I didn't really know what was going on because some of the names are too similar, so I was getting confused as to what was going on. I'm like, wait, weren't you just here, but now you're talking about you're there? You were just missing this person, but now you're talking to this person. It happened in a lot of weird ways, and I didn't understand it. So that's got to be a con. It'll probably be better on like a reread or something, but that was the issue I had with it. So let's get into some of the pros, because I do have quite a few of them. So some of the characters felt like fluff and just weren't needed, so that's why I left that in the con. But one of my main pros is some of the characters. Like I really like Elias. Like any character that can communicate with wolves or is a werewolf or something like that, I'm automatically going to like. But the entire like the epic kind of chill nature of Elias, and like the nature of the not being human, not being a part of this magic or that magic, and being very neutral and naturey kind of thing. I really really like that character, and I'm mad we didn't get more of them. And I want like just more of that ability. I hope that becomes more of a thing. Like the stuff that's not so much the the male magic, female magic, dark one, and all that kind of stuff. Like not so much of that, but like an actual middle path, and like that goes into my whole thoughts over the whole series, because just all the concepts got me thinking like already. Like it feels like a very good kind of. I mean, I imagine back then when this first came out, there was probably some hella like theory crafting going on. Oh man, to be around back then. So apart from Elias, I really did like Matt too. Like Matt reminds me, like he feels, like a snarky Samwise, or like a kind of a less goofy Ron, or like a very classic kind of best friend companion type character who like just has an interesting kind of thing going on. He's a fun character so far, but like he's also the one with the ruby hilted dagger, and I was sus about the dagger, so of course I was paying attention to him. So that's probably also why I like him a lot. So when all the stuff started happening with that, I was, surprised but not surprised. So like when the personality shift started happening, I'm like, oh, okay, all right, is this having some Horcrux type effects and stuff, like slightly possessed and all that? So part of me was like, it's kind of spoiled because of the way the promos have been promoting that dagger and stuff. So there's something up with it, but luckily it didn't. I only knew a little bit. I didn't like, so I assumed, okay, maybe something's up with the dagger, it's infecting him, like turning him bad or something like that. Just something's going on with it. Or like getting possessed by the dark one or something. Like I didn't realize it was somehow, yes, it's that, but it's worse. Like, so I was like, holy crap, when we find out what's going on with the dagger, I'm like, this is intense. And it kind of got me thinking, like, Because what happens with the ruby hilted dagger, I think, is a great example of magical fallout, and I think it's kind of where Brandon got the idea of like the just the runoff effects of investiture that happens in the Cosmere. Like this kind of feels similar to that. Like even if he got rid of the dagger, like the effects are still like so deep in him that it like will continue to progress, and that it would continue to progress and it affect other people. Like it's just like a magical infection kind of thing, and I really really like that. It's magical infection. Didn't Brandon say he has a virus based magic system? Hmm. Maybe see, and it's so cool because like I another reason I really really enjoy this because I'm seeing a lot of Brandon's inspirations. Like I'm seeing where he gets some of his stuff. Like the one of the like classes of abilities in the magic system is called talents, and like in Brandon's Alcatraz series, their magic is called talents, like the Smedry talents or whatever. So it really feels like clearly he kind of got that from it, and like the use of light and the way intent is important and stuff like that. It all feels very much like some Cosmere stuff. So I very much see some of Brandon's inspirations. So that when I started to really see that stuff, that kind of really heightened my enjoyment for it too. I really like Rand too because he's one of these different kind of chosen one characters. He's not just the, let's go ahead and do it. Like he really does just want to go home and like raise sheep and just be chill and just, hang out and go play will they won't they with that one girl and like all this stuff all day. Like so I like the fact that it's very much an unwanted destiny and all this stuff. And then is gentling just a different term for castration? Did I pick up on that properly? Cause that was like just yeah, because he's basically a male Aes Sedai, however you say that. And that's like a no because they go crazy, and like in order to help prevent it, I guess you got to like chop off some of the testosterone. So like that, I'm just like, eh. So yeah, I really like Rand. I like how he's always basically on the verge of basically being too scared to do anything and like feeling very weak and stuff. But then like he embodies what like courage is, like you and bravery. Like you can't be brave unless you're terrified. So like he really embodies that a lot, and I really dig it. So he's really well written. I really like that a lot. And apart from the characters, I really like the magic systems because, of course, I like the magic systems and the world building. I'm normally a really big fan of hard magic systems, like kind of more Brandon type stuff or like super power level stuff with really hard rules that have to be dealt with or circumvented and stuff like that. I really like that. But a lot of this seems more soft magic. Like I don't know what the wisdoms do. Really, I don't really understand it. I don't really understand the Aes Sedai, the witch women people. Like I mean I get they touch the true source and they can do stuff. I don't get it. I don't get the breadth and the scope of it at all. I don't get the warders. I feel like gleemen, which are just bards. If they're just bards, just call them bards. Like so if they're not just bards, then there's more to it. So like are they warrior bards? That's another thing that was like tripping me up while I was hard ninja because I didn't like that was the stuff that I was talking about earlier. It was like, what are you talking about? Like when it's just using these words, but then I'm like contextually, I'm like, that's just a bard. Why don't you say bard? Like it was that stuff. It just kind of it irked me something terrible. Sorry, I'm getting really rambly in this one. I get the impression that a lot of these like magics and stuff, like talents versus like speaking to wolves versus using the one power and like all this stuff, they feel very distinct, but they're probably all just shades of the same thing. But they all feel like softer magic systems. It's like there's a lot of room for just because you can do that. Like it feels like a lot of that. So like, because the entire thing that happens at the end when Rand like basically takes up a shard very much is like some stuff Brandon has done. Like so I definitely see the inspiration he got from there. So but like when he basically does that and like starts smiting people and using the power and like all that effortlessly, like I didn't quite understand what was going on. I mean I got it, because of his monologue or whatever, but like I didn't like how. Like is it just being in proximity does that? Like how is it affecting him? He clearly didn't kill the big bad, like, cause no. So it's like, it just, I imagine it'll be explained a lot more because there's 13 more books, so I'm probably going to get way more information than I'm craving right now. So I'm just going to be happy and jump along and, go along for the ride. So I'll definitely be hopping right into the next one after this gleefully, and I'll probably be able to crank through a couple of them in March. So fingers crossed for that. So the reveal that Rand is like the dragon, he's the guy from the prologue and stuff, Born Again, and this whole cyclical time and all this stuff. I really like those ideas. I think it's really cool, and I love how it ties into the magic and how it's just like it makes me wonder if like the guy in the beginning, like, was he crazy because he was doing the stuff that Rand is now probably going to be doing? That's probably one of the best benefits about using softer magic systems. You can do all kinds of stuff and twist it all into the world building and make it fundamental parts of the way everything works. I mean, you can do that with hard magic systems too, but I feel like you can probably do it a little simpler with some softer ones and just make it go, oh, wow, and like, oh, and just really go, a wizard did it. And it just straight up works. So I really do like that kind of stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I don't want to get into too many spoilers, and I don't want to ramble for too long. So join me again next time when I talk about The Great Hunt, which is the next one in the series. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and I will talk to you all next time. Peace.